until more recently, I think people have still been afraid. I see it in writing groups. People are like, well, I have this story about this, but I've been told it's not going to fit right now because they're not doing those right now.
Oh yeah.
Even though
Well,
they might be good in
is,
their own market.
yeah, that's happening a lot.
And what's so amazing about that people like yourself are doing these kinds of things now with funding development, I think, and I mean, I think some people might take umbrage with what I'm about to say because they're very sort of system oriented always. But I think people have been seeing for the last few years the studios struggling. There are a lot of a lot of flops are happening with big budgets and things like that. But at the same time, the creatives are kind of hamstrung by whatever the box is that the studios or the networks are kind of forcing people into. And I've seen it myself going into writing rooms saying, well, you're going to have to turn this character into this, and you're going to have to, because we're trying to reach, this mandate, that man. And sometimes you have to do that anyway, just to kind of make the story work. And there are, but the more that kind of checklist grows that you're kind of squeezed into, the more the creative value, I think, in a sense, or the creative honesty, if you will, shrinks. Because they're trying to fit into whatever the studios and the networks are trying to do. But because we've had all of these options opened up to us, and they've been around for a while, but I think what's different now is that there's people like yourself who are finding ways to talk to investors about, not just looking at all of these streaming avenues and distribution avenues as Mickey Mouse outfits any longer, but that there are real ways to kind of independently develop creative material that's good and put a valuable amount of money behind them and still make them profitable. That's something that's a bit of a shift because, up until more recently, I think people have still been afraid. I see it in writing groups. People are like, well, I have this story about this, but I've been told it's not going to fit right now because they're not doing those right now.
Oh yeah.
Even though they might be good in their own market.
Yeah, that's happening a lot. And you and I've talked about it. I've had other people, that I've talked about it in the past where, studios are looking for a specific type of genre, and horror is always a great thing, but I'm a lover and a hater of horror. That, I like that ghost story stuff like yours, I love that type of thing, but there's certain things that I just don't believe in. And I think to myself, there's so much murders and so much rapes and so much things that are going on in the world that why are we advocating towards that in a sense through our productions,
right.
And it's crash and burn and race cars and all that kind of fun stuff that that's fine, but I think when we swing towards, I think, a little more family friendly stuff, a little bit more things that aren't all the sex and nakedness and all that stuff, does it always have to be that? You kind of get tired of it. And I've spoken to a lot of people about that. And then you got to think of the investor. What if he's a religious person? He's not going to fund you. Boom, you're done.
Right. Yeah.
So you've got to really think about your market and your target. And you've got to think about what is in that script, and what are you portraying to the world? There is so much of this family friendly stuff going on. And I've got distribution sources of people that are family friendly because they're religious.
Right.
It doesn't have to be religious, but it's not all the swearing and the cursing and the, and the boobs and ass and all the stuff, and showing off, like you don't necessarily have to do it.
Yeah.
You don't.
I mean, I'm a spiritual person. As we talked about before, I'm not particularly religious, but I in a conventional sense anyway, but I definitely what I see exactly what you're saying, because rather than embed excitement, whether it's sexual excitement or horrific things that kind of shock you, or exciting things like explosions, rather than use those as elements in a deeper story in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
We become like a carnival ride now where, you know, a lot of films are just there for the shock value, and as has always been the case, but there was always room for, I think, maybe earlier in the development of film and in our history, where you know you use those things to tell a great story. You use them to convey a certain set of, whether it be values or a lesson, you know, a tale of caution. Even a horror story can contain, you know, those very elements of caution, like don't run into dark buildings with strange sounds in them and scary people.
Yeah.
Run away. But
Yeah.
you know, I'm trivializing it a bit, but that you know, stories that have something to say, and in a diverse landscape too. It doesn't have to be something to say in all in one direction, which is what sometimes institutions can do. If they're going to say something, it all goes in one, you know, in through one stream. And if you're trying to say something else, you know, then you're left kind of wondering where you go. But yeah, I think then in that case, I think a lot of people just default to going, well, let's just make it fun, and that's fine sometimes. But I think there are people who have more to say, who end up
Yeah.
doing a lot of stuff just for fun because they can't get what they really want to do out there, you know. And but I think that's changing now because there are more ways to do it, like you said.
Well, thrillers are fun too. I mean, I love most genre. I just, you know, one thing I won't fund is anything in respect to devils and things like that, because it freaks me out. You know, and it really does. And I've heard stories on set where people have gotten hurt and just weird things happening. So I don't open myself up to danger of any sort in that sense, you know, so I kind of stay away from that. But other than that, I mean, horror films are fine. You know, there's a lot of this family friendly. I mean, why is Hallmark doing so well? Well, because they have this, you know, this certain like sort of script of, you know, everybody falls in love and, you know, it's all happy. And there's not, you know, there's not any of this, you know, nakedness and crazy, you know, like, you know, 50 Shades of Grey kind of thing, which was an amazing movie. But you know, like it was like, you know, there's things that are fine. Like it's okay to have those films, but we need to mix it up, you know. And on top of that, what I've said in the past too to a lot of screenwriters is why don't you enter some of the contests? Like if you're getting awards and you're doing well, then it's even another layer on top of it where people have said, we really like your, you know, your screenplay.
Right.
And, you know, you're getting that award. And it's almost like a, you know, true story, or somebody, you know, people are writing more about books, you know, they're taking on books and they're writing, you know, they're doing films on, you know, stories of already written books, you know, things are happening like that now as well. But I think really what it is you have to pitch to the investor, they want to see ROI, period, right? So how do I get my money back, and how do you de-risk this?
Right.
So the way I de-risk is to make sure that there's those multiple revenue streams happening. Right. So for instance, there's been times where films have not done well, but yet they've sold a ton of, you know, plush toys or action figures. It's very well known that way. Yeah. Where the film didn't do well, but they did amazing selling those pieces, those action figures or plush toys. Well, you know, that's really great. Yeah. So you've made your money back. You've made money for the investor. Okay, maybe it didn't do great in the theaters, but do they care? They got their money back plus more. That's what they care about.
Right. Yeah.
You know, well, which is sad in a sense. And then there's some who just want to say, oh, I funded this movie, you know, and it, you know, high net worth individuals, sometimes they like that. Plus there's, you know, Bill 181, there's a full write-off if you're in the States, you know, but you have to, and I didn't realize this until the other day. I was talking to somebody about it. You have to actually have the film produced that same year that you've done the film, that you've, you know, you've done production on it to get that write-off, which is kind of strange, but so you know, at least
I guess it forces a big push out the gate to well, yeah, you're right. That does sound a bit strange, because if you don't do that push and you lose, you get to write it off. It sort of disincentivizes the big push.
Well, I think you can write it off the next year too. I have to go back and really look at the fine script, you know, because that's always the fine lines in there. But I need to review that again. But the whole point I'm trying to make too is you have your tax credits anyhow, and you have, you have ways of getting your film, funded, and the return on the investment as well. But yeah, I would definitely layer it. You have to layer it. Get somebody that's really cool to make some great music, and why not sell it on Spotify afterwards? You can sell it online on your, on your website when you've created your, your website for your film. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can skin that cat, as they say.
Yeah, and amazing libraries too. I know I've had to dig up some samples, and I didn't have the budget for paying major licensing fees, but through Creative Commons and some of these sites where artists let you use their material as long as you make an attribution in your credits to them. You can find that through, I think it was like sites like Joomla and SoundCloud, and even on YouTube. There's a lot of Creative Commons uploads that you can get in touch with the artist and things like that. It's an interesting market because you may be at the beginning of someone's next hit record as well, because you're helping them.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's three ways you can do it. I mean, I have contacts where they actually have the rights to the music, and you can you can lease out the music. He just a few years back, he just got, I think it was Bob Marley's music as well, so as long as you're doing, I think it's 26 seconds, you can use it all day long. But yeah, if you're going to use the actual whole song or whatever, yes, there's a certain amount of pay. But really, in retrospect, why not hire some amazing musicians and create your own score?
Yeah.
Because then the next thing you know, that could be a hit too, and now you're selling it and it's going viral.
Right.
And boom, you have your own intellectual property. You actually own it.